to be honest, outside of like moments where the plot is kind of going at breakneck speed in this movie, I still think that this was one of the most like just awesome superhero movies I've ever seen.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Tardy to the Party, aka 3P, where us two hooligans talk shop about the holy trinity of pop culture, Marvel, DC, and Star Wars. I'm your boy Jsib, and joined by, as always,
I'm KP here.
Now, throughout the drought that is going to be 2024 as far as comic book media is concerned,
well, we got a little
back.
Got some spicy stuff, but
yeah, I got
like
Joker 2, Deadpool 3. You got the
Echoes next week.
You got Echo, Sony stuff with Madam Web and Raven. I think that's still supposed to come out this year. Totally forgot about those until
I literally forgot about those until he just said them.
And then of course with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom coming out, the end of the DCEU. Are you okay?
Did you see what Johnson said about playing a live action Spider-Man?
Johnson.
The one that is it Jake Johnson that voices the
Oh yeah.
Peter, is he Peter B. Parker or Peter A. Parker?
I think he's the older one.
Well, he's the older one. So,
but yeah, I did see where.
Did you saw what he said? Throwing that shade at Sony?
Yeah.
I was like, I read that and I was like, well, he's not wrong.
But yeah, probably not the smartest move if you do want to play a live action Spider-Man, but I somewhat respect it.
Oh no, I think he knows for a fact that everyone respects him for that statement. If you don't, then I don't know, maybe shitty Sony Spider-Verse movies are your thing.
But with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom also just coming out, it ends the coveted, adored reign of the DCEU. Certain movie.
Adored reign.
Certain movie. We figured we'd take a look back, and obviously we're somewhat of a newer channel. There, a lot of these movies, you don't know what our opinions are of them, other than maybe the old podcast where we would mention them here and there. But so we're gonna start off, of course, as we should, the beginning with Man of Steel today. One of my favorite comic book movies of all time. I think it's probably one of the most. Well. We're probably just gonna be pretty spoiler off the top. I mean, this movie's, what?
This movie's 10 years old.
Yeah, 10 years old. Came out in 2013, I think. Right?
Yes. I mean, at this point, yeah, I'd say that we can just.
Yeah, 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd
so
say we're definitely not gonna do our normal format here.
But yeah, obviously we still have. It's actually been a while since I had watched this movie, though. Hasn't been 10 years, obviously.
Oh God, no.
But what's what do you think? If I don't know if it's been a while for you, or if you anything new popped up.
It's probably been. What's sad is I own physical copies of a lot of these. Older movies, especially this one. I own a physical copy. I'll admit, though, in our streaming culture, I was too damn lazy to turn on my PS5 that I used for my Blu-ray player and pop the disc in, and I just went and started the thing on Netflix. I mean, the format's the same. It's 1080p, so it's like, well, might as well just stream it.
Some would say you're supporting Zach more currently now because they just got all those movies on Netflix, so you're giving.
You know what, Jay? You're goddamn right. Goddamn right. Um, it'd have been probably over a year, I'd say, for sure. Because, just like with the MCU, the problem is that now I'm like, I've seen these older ones plenty of times when they were newer, and now that I have the team up movie, the end result, the end game, Zack Snyder's Justice League. Well, I'm just gonna go watch that movie. So it'd have been it'd have been a while. But with what you said, to be honest, outside of like moments where the plot is kind of going at breakneck speed in this movie, I still think that this was one of the most like just awesome superhero movies I've ever seen. And I'll never forget too, like in the movie theater watching it, I just sat there in awe, like especially in the opening sequence with Krypton. Like you've got like crazy shit going on with like all the spaceships firing at each other and like all this stuff during Zod's mutiny. And I'll never just forget thinking, like, watching that movie for the first time, thinking, like, holy shit, like, this is awesome. This isn't the campy shit from the 70s or in the 80s, and, like, this isn't the campy Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, and, like, and it's, like, it's not grounded like Batman. I mean, it in a sense, but not really, because, I mean, good God, we're talking about aliens, but it's like I just remember watching it and the special effects were so raw and I was blown away by like, oh, like this I think is what people have been waiting for, or at least what you should have been waiting for in a Superman movie. Um I don't ever remember how audiences received it when it first came out. I don't know that a lot of people like really cared to go see it, but I could be wrong. Do you know, or
I mean, I mean, I know it made decent money. I think it made around 8. But I think back in the day, from what I remembered, it's just all around. It seemed like a pretty divisive movie. Loved it or you hated it because it not my Superman.
well, yeah.
But I've defended this movie day one, and I adore this movie.
I don't. Well, and the thing too that about it that it's like the whole well, it's not my super. Well, okay, like yeah, it's a different approach to the character, and I'll be honest. I mean, good God, man, the old Christopher Reeves one, the first one, shit. I've probably only seen it like once or twice in my life when I was a kid, and it was on AMC. It's American Movie Classics for all you people out there that's never even known what cable television is. I know you know what AMC is. You've all watched Breaking Bad. But no, so I'll just never forget being blown away by the movie and just actually getting like a nice intro of like Jor-El and all of that was just brilliant. And then like as the movie goes on, we get like the present day Clark who's trying to figure out exactly who he is. It's actually kind of just like Bruce Wayne and Batman Begins. You're basically giving him when he's kind of running around the world trying to discover himself. And like I said, the plot goes and really what I mean when I say the plot goes at breakneck speed, it's just like I believe that there are moments where you're supposed to grasp the idea that there's jumps in overall time, but you
Yep.
don't really get that feeling because it just kind of goes from scene to scene to scene.
Yeah, there's
And
one in particular that I think it's pretty obvious. But
which one is that for you? Which one are you thinking of?
First Flight. So when he first talks to Jor-El and gets his suit, he's got a
Yeah.
beard or facial hair, and then when it cuts to him actually wearing the suit, which is the very next like scene, it kind of
Shaved,
feels
yeah.
like he's
I
like
mean, yeah.
completely clean shaven, and it's
Yeah,
like,
that's the most obvious one, yeah. I mean, I'll just say it that when you're midway through the movie and he's only interacted with Lois once, right? He saved her essentially from bleeding out. I believe it's only once, and then like they just have this attraction to each other out of no. It just kind of seems like it's
love
very
at first sight, dude.
rushed. I mean, fucking truly, good. I mean,
I
I
mean,
don't know.
he also saved her life, man.
I just it just it's just the part where they're out in the desert and they're standing there and one in the movie it just cuts to it very quickly, and two it's just I don't know, it just has a weird like feeling that it's like, okay, you guys seem like you're a little too in love with each other way too fast, but uh that's really my only gripe with the movie. I actually, when
Oh,
rewatching
they
it, kind of.
interacted in the interrogation scene.
Oh yeah, man. She's fucking.
That's
Come
the
on.
that's the S scene.
In my language, it means hope. I'm in love with you. You are everything.
I mean, that line pissed me. I hate when movies back then would cut off like the superhero name. We almost said it.
They're coming with.
I'm not
They're
gonna.
coming
I
with
can't disagree. Some of the stuff's
they're
a little
coming with the
rushed, but
Superman. Superman, the alien. That's what they're calling him. It's just-
Superman.
I'll say what I was gonna say too, man, is now it does address it, but while watching it, I'm like sitting here, you go through like this 10-15 minutes, and I'm like sitting here and I'm like, this is a plot hole. Why did General Zod want Lois up on this ship? And like it's not until they finally like land back on Earth that it gets finally circled back, or and she goes, they looked inside my mind. That's why I was up there. And I just kind of laughed at it because like I don't know. It's just like, you know, the female that works with Zod, I can't remember the character's name. And you know, she's like
Feora.
Feora. Okay. Thank you. Um when she like points to once that human, I'm like, this seems like a weird plot hole, and then it's not until like they crash land where she says how like, oh, they looked inside my mind, and I laughed and I was like, well, could you kind of show like how exactly said Kryptonians were able to get inside your mind? Like they never really show how they do it. You just get the scene between Zod and Clark Cal, and you just kind of know like, oh, they're inside his mind, and that's kind of it. I don't know, it was just it was a very weird choice sequence of events for me because again, as I'm watching it, I'm like, well, this is as it's being developed, I'm like, well, this is a glaring plot hole. Like, why did they bring Lois up there? It made no sense until like it's just circled back around to when they drop back down. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It could also be partially with the one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, she says how like, oh, they looked inside my mind to gain information about you and everything I knew. She says I tried to fight it, and you know, he just basically, I think, Soups says real fast. He's like, "It's fine. They did the same thing to me. It's cool," and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I hear all that, but the movie's fucking amazing. I will always adore this
I'm not
movie.
saying I'm not saying it's not.
I especially I kind of somewhat I get it, like the whole this movie's, especially back in the day where it was like it's too dark and depressing for a Superman, and it's like, well, it's also got quite a bit of emotion and hope in it as well. Like you actually like watch like the very
So you,
first scene with Clark Kent or Superman, he's getting
mhm.
saved by a human because he would have survived that crab cage falling on him. But like the human that like tackles him out of the way, you know, it's like that's kind of cool that in this live action interpretation, our first introduction to him is being saved by a human. So I think that's cool. I think a lot of the moments with like his mom growing up, especially the one where he freaks out and runs into the closet, I love that scene. Uh, Also, he smiles a lot more than I think people give him credit for. That was another gripe that used to get back in the day, was just like, oh, he doesn't smile enough. And it's, I even think the way the movie ends is super hopeful. Them coming onto the planet, the interaction with Lois, where welcome to the planet, double entendre. Um,
Yeah.
Zod, out of all the years of DC movies we've got, is still, I think, the fucking standard as far as like what we got. I I just love the idea of him as a character and the way they established him, which is also cool about this movie. Is it doesn't really feel like a superhero movie. It truly actually feels like a sci-fi movie that just happens to have a superhero character in it. But how his motivations are built in because of how Krypton's births worked. You know, he's got a purpose that he was literally bred to preserve and keep Krypton safe and going on and moving forward. And that's his pure motivation to why he's back. And Earth
You
is
could look at it
compatible with being
like,
able to terraform it. All of his
yeah.
motivations make sense, even down to uh, the dreaded scene. It was very polarizing, which
Hmm.
I love and respect the hell out of that fucking choice. And
I mean, it
I remember
actually
loving it
all,
even day one in the movie theater.
yeah, because it all like, because I think you and I like realized how for the movie it made sense. Um, and to your point about Zod, like that's the beauty of the movie is that Zod comes from what he knew could be like their old traditions, and they're supposed to be like this utopia, and this is the way they've done things for centuries, you know, and everyone's like got a predetermined fate with how they have a caste system, whereas, you know, Clark, Soups, his parents believed that that's why their society ultimately fell, and they wanted Clark to learn, you know, or Cal to learn, you know, the power of free will and choice. And the beauty in it is that, like you're saying, is that you're supposed to realize that like the human that saves him, and then like all the emotional growth that he has with his mother is like what makes him, it's like, yeah, it's not really like spoon fed to you, but it is the difference in between of like, you know, that is what actually makes Kal-El better. And like Fioria tries to tell him, like, we're genetically and evolutionary like more advanced than you because we don't have um uh did she say humanity? No. Moral attachment, I think is how she put it. To that extent at least. I can't remember if that's the exact thing that she said, but that's the whole part of this movie, and is that you're supposed to root for those things, and even though like it all hope seems lost, it's like I don't know, the hope thing. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I don't have much to say on that, but I just like really love how they hammer home, the moral story of like it's better to have like free choice and all this, and how experiences can shape your choices. So that's why I like this movie a lot. Um, and to be honest, all of that is why this is one of my most favorite parts in all of superhero movies is when he crashes into the ship of the colonizers that Zod eventually took over from the Jor-El AI. When he gets back and crashes into that ship that's got the um essentially like the what did the Genesis, is that what they called it, with like all the
Oh, the chamber. Yeah.
was it Genesis chamber, that where they
Yeah.
make all the Matrix, I'm gonna call them the Matrix births. It's basically it's basically the same thing. I mean, when he says like if you destroy this, like Krypton is gone for good and all of this, and like he just kind of pauses, and it's my favorite, most powerful scene, because he just kind of basically, to Cal, like Kryptonians are just a bunch of assholes, if you will. That's all he's really understood from them. And humanity has been kind to him, and at time, and he's experienced that humanity's been both bad and good. But like Kryptons, he's just like, well, you're all just bad, and you're gonna kill like billions of people. So he's like, well, you're evil people. So it's just, to me, very powerful, and I just love that scene when he just says like, he just kind of breathes and he just goes, Krypton had its chance, and he just lasers that whole fucking ship and just takes it down. I'm like, that's like one of my favorite things in all of like comic book superhero movies ever, because it's just kind of powerful that he went through his whole life like wanting to know where he came from because he knew he was an alien and he wanted to meet others like him, and then he meets them and they're horrible individuals, and he's like, I have to reject this.
And
And
I
it
think that's
speaks.
to further that home. I think that's why that final scene with Zod
I was
works
about
so
to go there too.
well.
Yeah,
Like
I was about
he
to go there
he
too.
leaves him no choice in the end. Like he's already, he alluded, there's a line earlier in the fight where he's like, this either ends one of two ways, either you die or I do.
Yeah,
And
and
then even in that
that one,
scene where
yeah.
he's lasering down the family in the bank, or about to, Clark's trying to stop him and he keeps pleading to him to stop, and he says never. It's like, and in that moment in itself, he's like, he's legitimately never. He's
Yeah.
never, like, he's legitimately killing the last person of his kind that he knows,
Yeah.
is apparently Kara. But to his
Right.
knowledge, this is him definitively killing his last thread to his people, and it's to save, yes, a single family, but it's, the theme of humanity overall. It's just, well, he chooses Earth as his home. People like, go read a comic. Man kills comic. This is not his first
Say
choice.
like
It's not his
say.
first go-to, obviously.
I mean,
If it
and
comes
well,
down to
and
the
the
greater good sign of thing, he will do it.
it's just funny to me because like people will say this about Superman and they don't like that scene. But it's okay that Batman says to a nemesis, "Well, I don't have to kill you, but I don't have to save you either." Which is another like one of my other all-time favorite just one-liner comic book
Yeah.
things in a movie.
So
like
badass.
that too, so badass. He's like, I'm not gonna kill you, and he just like throws the battering to get the wind through the rest of the train. But I don't have to save you either. And he's just, I remember watching that for the first time. I was like, oh, cold, ice cold, and anyways, but God, the other thing about this movie is watching it too. I mean, how like I know it's all CGI, but I mean, how badass is that fight with him and Zod? Like, just flying through the air, like knocking over skyscrapers. Like, dude, that's what I mean. Like, watching that for the first time, I was like, holy shit, yes! Like, this is everything we needed from a Superman movie. This is what I remember thinking watching it, like, this is what fucking Superman Returns should have been. Shit like this. Like,
Dude,
not like,
for me, I went to a completely different franchise. I was like, oh, so Dragon Ball Evolution could have been good. They just completely dropped the fucking ball because this is what I fucking expected out of the fight scenes.
Yeah, dude. I remember watching that, and oh man, I was like, oh shit, they did some Matrix Revolution shit with this movie. This is awesome. Oh my god, because I remember that was the thing about watching Matrix Revolution with their end fight. I remember watching that thinking like, it'd be really cool to see a fucking Superman movie like this, because that's basically what Neo is right now, and yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Distracting. Distracting.
That was awesome.
I know what you're trying to do, but I don't think it's gonna work like that, Chief.
But I don't know. Fight was cool.
What are your opinions on Jonathan Kent in this?
More, dude, because I fucking love Kevin Costner.
I
like, I won't lie, man. I get it. Like, fans like yourself that, because I guess like not every comic line with him. Like, I guess he doesn't always live. Like, there are like storylines where he does die. I don't know. I just I love Kevin Costner, and I just kind of wish he did save him. I really
mean,
do.
a lot of people aren't really or weren't fans of his portrayal of Jonathan Kent or the way he died, because traditionally the heart attack that he dies from in the comics, which is kind of like a lesson to Superman that it's like he can't actually save everybody, basically, to boil it down and put it simply. Like, he can't solve every problem because there's nothing he could do.
Yeah.
So it's like I feel like they tried to make that a little. Well, they just changed Jonathan Kent too, because he wasn't necessarily as much of a downer, as I'll say. But I liked it. I didn't mind it. You know me, I'm more open to adaptation when it comes to stuff like that. But I think it works within the realm of this movie just for the fact of how, yeah, it's sci-fi. Yeah, there's an alien god on Earth. But I feel like it still tried to mimic the Dark Knight trilogy in the sense of grounding it as much as they could and making it as realistic as they could.
Like
even
with
Perry, with denying the whole Lois story and just being like, could you imagine what the people would do if they knew an alien like a god is among them? Like, they'd freak out.
Right, and I will admit that is another aspect that I just love about this movie, is like how when Perry says that, like, he's like, can you imagine how the people of this planet would react if someone can do the kinds of things that you're talking about on this? And with Jonathan Kent, so I'm guessing that people just don't like the portrayal that he was like you're saying, like a downer, like he was more fearful, and he wasn't
Well, it's I think
really.
also like mainly the line after he like yeah, it's after Pete Ross' family tells on him for saving the bus. He asks John, young Clark asks John, he's like, "What was I supposed to do? Let him die?" And response is, "Maybe."
Maybe.
Like,
I know. I
yeah,
was
Jonathan Kent
like,
in the comics wouldn't say that, and probably maybe should have figured out a different way to get to where you wanted to end there without
yeah,
maybe having him just go, "Yeah, maybe you should have let people die, Clark."
yeah, you should. Just, yeah, Clark, you should have let all your friends die on that bus.
But I still think it makes sense in the fact of this Jonathan is just more protective of Clark and still buys into the whole of,
Yeah,
you know, what would people think if they knew you existed? Like at the end of the day, he just cares about protecting Clark and making sure that prolonging people knowing as much as possible, so at least he's as grown and I would probably well equipped and knowledgeable at that time as he can be. Um, I, which I think works in this. Like, yeah, not traditional, but insulting either. Except for that one line.
yeah,
But then he has a nice scene with him, I think, later when he gets pushed down and he's like grabbing the pole of the fence and he grabs it. And then Pete Ross does help him up with the hand. And
yeah,
he's like, "Did they hurt you?" He's like, "You know, they can't hurt me or whatever." And that's not what.
right.
Kind of a nice, just like talking about you physically. Like, are you like
Yeah,
okay? And then he even still like I wanted to hit him so bad. Like, well, what would have happened then? Would you feel any better? So I think it's just there was still pieces of that Jonathan Kent still there, just very much desaturated down, much like the other complaint. Saturated. Justice League looked like shit. I love I'll say it. I love the color palette of this, the tones. Like I do. Fits within the theme of the movie, grounded, realistic. We live in a fucking depressing ass world. Yeah. Some people, another reason they maybe didn't like this is because they didn't want to remind it of the world that we live in. They wanted something more bright and colorful and
I
happy. And it's
mean,
like, well, no, I want these heroes that can be the bright spots in a world that reminds me of one that I live in.
yeah, I mean, I can understand that viewpoint though, because you've said it before, and this is also like why, like, my dad and I always love going to the movies, because, and my dad even finally said this once, like, we were going to see oh god, Last Jedi. Um but my dad said too, like, how he loved movies because movies were like, they're all of our, like, for a lot of us, I'm not to be political, but I will just say, like, the 99% of us in this world, it's escape from reality, because yeah, like, yeah, like you're saying, like, the real world is kind of gritty. So, like, usually movies are a way that we have that escapism. And I can see why, yeah, people wouldn't receive it well. And especially back then. Because back then, like you've always said, what were superhero movies back then? Like, somewhat grounded, trying to be realistic Marvel movies, but at the end of the day, those were still like colorful and family oriented and happiness, and that was like what they sold you. And coming off of that, and that's why I think, like, this movie probably, like, at the time wasn't received well, because a lot of people were coming off of Avengers and they were like, "Oh, Man of Steel's depressing. It's all dark." It's like, well, yeah, it's a different take on the whole thing, and to be honest, like, good. Good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I wish Warner and DC kind of would have kind of kept the train going a little bit.
Stayed the course. Yeah.
Yeah, instead of, I mean, after the pivot from reshoots that Suicide Squad eventually has to go through and completely change that movie after what happens with the reception of BVS, kind of mostly downhill. It's just all downhill after that. You get a few wins here and there, but mostly it's not great. But it's just so
Yeah.
it was so depressing to me watching this movie. It was like, God damn, man! Like, we started off so fucking crispy, dude. Like, so good. Like,
It had the right Easter eggs.
it was almost
you had the
perfect.
LexCorp trucks. You had the Wayne satellite. Like, it had the right Easter eggs.
Yeah, you had the Pete Ross references. You had the young Lana Lane in the bus. Like, you had those little references too. A little bit more deeper cuts. But yeah, and even those fun Easter eggs that I don't know. Damn it.
Well, like you said, unfortunately, that sequel was made, and yeah, people really didn't like it.
Yep.
But then the R-rated cut is amazing. So
Yeah, that's what we'll be reviewing.
yes, we will.
Go figure.
I gotta tell you that well, we can talk about that off recording.
Okay.
Well, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, you're right. I mean, this movie started off something that looked very promising.
Probably maybe just. I mean, I do kind of hate saying this phrase, but like ahead of its time, like either that or just didn't come out at the right moment. Like you said, coming off the heels of, people used to have Avengers in that universe. I don't know if they were ready for something like this, which is just so odd with the success that the Dark Knight trilogy had. I wonder if it's just because it was Superman. Just Superman's considered to be more bright and hopeful, and it's just this was him kind of deconstructed and put in a different light.
It could be. It could be that people really just maybe they felt like, oh, this is a Superman movie trying to be like Batman, trying to be like Christopher Nolan's Batman, and people just didn't like it because, like you're saying, because to most people, Superman is like this bright, shining in the sun hope for humanity, that humanity is always going to be okay, and this movie doesn't. This movie definitely didn't sell you on that.
It does. I think it does in a different, more nuanced way. I think it's just not so.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. We're off to a great start, and also, yeah, another reason it's probably dark and grounded and gritty, kind of like the Dark Knight trilogies, because Christopher Nolan produced this movie, and he
true.
also told Zack no to Superman killing Zod, and then they wrote up the scene, sent it back to Christopher Nolan, and he was like, "Okay, you sold me. I'll allow it." And then that's how that got greenlit. Getting in there, that originally wasn't in there. So even Christopher Nolan understood. All right, I think it's scores time. Spoiler, or if it hasn't been like pretty clear already, this one's a 9er. Bang.
Yeah, I was gonna say like 8.5 for me. Yeah. A 9. A 9er.
Hot 9er, dude.
Yeah.
So next week we will follow up with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition. We're pretty much going to be doing this thing like as they were released. So I believe after that it would be Suicide Squad.
Yes.
It's a little much. And I don't think we're doing Justice League. I don't think we're If KP wants to, we can, but I think we're just gonna do the good.
Oh, well, there goes the off-camera discussion we were going to have, because I was straight up getting... I mean, actually, shit.
We can compare the two.
Though,
it's up to you.
No, that's not... No, absolutely not. Sorry. No, I am not going to watch two different versions of... Well, even though, fuck, those are two entirely different movies.
They are two fucking...
God,
I don't care what
that's
anybody
like...
says. They're two completely different.
Oh, they 100% are. And I would say we're just going to tell you, you take the time to go watch them and try to prove us wrong. You won't, because they're two entirely different movies. That's why the 4.5 hour cut is rated so much higher than the shitty one
even
we
by
got in
critics,
theaters.
which is saying something.
Yeah. I remember when... God, waiting for that. So, no, what I was going to say is I wanted to say, do I really gotta watch both Suicide Squads? But I forget that, yes, I do, because technically, the first one actually is the first one. And then
They're two different movies.
I know, I just don't like the first one.
I mean, yeah, that's why, we
Sorry,
should have also gotten hashtag release the air cut, even though that's now done now, so.
So, yeah, I mean, the order, I think, I get fuzzy after this, and I'll say that, so it's BVS Ultimate, then Suicide Squad, and then Wonder Woman?
It might be Wonder Woman and Aquaman.
Yeah.
Well, there's other ones too. Got Birds of Prey in there too. What I forgets about. Then you got Shazam somewhere in there.
Oh god, yeah.
Oh yeah. So yeah. So I guess we'll see you next week for BVS Ultimate Edition. We're still, in the going up. We're feeling the hype still before it, goes completely off the rails. All right. Well, KP, where can the people find you?
You can find me on all socials at Politesk. Last name followed by first initial.
And you can find me on Twitter or aka X Gon Give It To You.
Link in bio.
And Twitch at Jsib20. So we appreciate you for tuning in. If you did like what you saw, please give us a like, sub, a comment down below what you thought of Man of Steel as well. And if you'd like to continue on this DCEU review in Memoriam, definitely want to sub so you get notified when we come up with the next one next week. So until next time, I'm your boy Jsib.
And I'm your co-host KP.
See ya later.